Hello and welcome to my channel where we talk about WordPress and some builders that we can use with it. Today we're going to talk about Advanced Themer, which is an add-on for Bricks, the Bricks builder. I already did a video about that when it was released, but Maxim is doing such a great job with it. He's releasing new updates about every week and maybe sometimes maybe twice a week. So there's so much things that has changed. So many things has changed since its release that I thought it would be good to do another video on that. So again, we're going to cover everything, every aspect of it from scratch. At some point, I might do some updates video because, like I said, he does updates every week. So I won't redo it every week, of course, but at some point I might do just updates on it. But there's so many things now that are new that I wanted to start from scratch. So I have a new installation with Advanced Themer install, and I'm going to talk about that and maybe how to use it with a framework later on. If I go to the Advanced Themer website, as you can see of now, we have yearly licenses. Looks like the LTD that was available when it was released is now gone. It might come back at some point, like, for example, on Black Friday or things like that, but don't rely on that. Don't wait on that to buy it if you want to have it, because this is really a great tool and it is worth more than what you will pay even annually for 1.5 or unlimited license, which is, of course, the most affordable one. If it comes back as a LTD, you can always, of course, upgrade to that. So, of course, you need to have the Bricks Builder installed first of all. Then you install Advanced Themer, you enter your license key and activate the license. And now let's go with the theme settings. So by default, you will be taken here to the General tab, and this is an installation. So these should be the default settings. As you can see, everything is toggled on here by default, but what it does, if you take a close look at the names here, all of those, or almost all of those, will add new tabs here at the top. So if you want to deactivate the entire section, for example, here for class variable, by toggle that off, you toggle off all the options for that section as well. So the only ones that don't have any tabs here are the even extra has one, the color palette and the admin bar are the two that don't have any tabs associated with it. I'm going to come back to that a little bit later on. For now, I'm going to deactivate everything just to focus on the other options in the general settings, and I want to cover them one by one, like I said. So if I go to the builder elements, these are elements that you can add to your bricks panel, that you can add after that, of course, to your page. So we have the dark mode toggle, the dark mode button, we have color swatch, preset swatch, theme editor, and the style guide. So let's first of all start by that. Click save. And we're going to open Bricks to see how it looks right now. I'm going to open a new page that I just created, which is empty. So let's exit that one with Bricks. Sorry. So for those options that we have, we need to go down in the palette and we will see, did I toggle that on? Oops, I forgot to toggle that on. Sorry, I'm going to resave that. Okay, let's refresh. I thought I did it, but anyway. Let's refresh that, and you see now that at the bottom we have the Advanced Themer panel, and we have the dark mode toggle and dark mode button. So if I bring that, well, let's add maybe a new section. So if I add those to my page, dark toggle and the dark button. So you see these are two buttons, two elements to be able to switch between light and dark mode. So this one is simply a light and dark button, and this one is the same thing, but it goes from one to the other. So as you might guess, this allows you, if you have colors for both light and dark mode, to switch from one to the other. Of course, in order for that to work, you need to choose dark and light colors in your color panel. Now, as you might guess, we have those two that we just saw, but where are all the others? Well, they're not available right now because by deactivating everything, I also deactivated the colors. And for us to be able to have the color swatches, preset the swatches, and so on, we need to have the color activated. So let me go back to the General tab and at least activate that one, the color panel CPT. I'm going to click Save. And when we activate that, we don't have another tab here, but we do have another option that appears here for the color palettes. So let's go there first. And we have no palette by default. So let's add our own color palette. Clicking that, we can give it a name. Let's say default. And then we can put all of our colors right there. So let's say primary color. And I don't know, let's use this one. Let's use some colors that are pretty fine. I'm going to add another one. You can give them the name that you want. Of course, I'll go with the classic ones, primary, secondary, and so on. Let's say text, maybe. I'm going to use the black. White. I could have set black for the other one as well. Let's go with white. And of course, you can use accent, action, and so on. You can put as many colors as you want. Okay. So I'm going to keep it like that. I'm going to click on publish. And let's go and I'm going to save my page here and refresh it so that we can see the new page and the new options that we have activated in Advanced Themer. So now you can see that we have color swatch, preset swatch, theme editor, and color palette swatches, style guide, sorry, that have been added. So first of all, let me go inside my settings and let's create a new or select that new default theme here. I'm going to add that to all my pages, to the entire site, let's say. And if I go inside my colors here, you see that it has created a panel for me, a palette for me. The default one is the name that I gave it. And all my colors are there with variables. You see var primary, secondary, and so on. Text, white, accent. So we can use any of those as variables anywhere on the site, of course, not just in the settings here, as you might guess. So let me just check the other options that we have now. So if I have the color swatch, let me select the color. So let's go with the primary, for example. And let's go with some post title, let's say. Should I? Well, no, let's go with primary. This was for the different colors. So let's use the primary. So this is to create your own color swatches, as you might have guessed. So secondary, this is something that you can give to the client if you want to, or if you work as a theme, you can use those elements here to put all of them like that. And you can, of course, reorder them. You can have space them. So space height. I'm going to put some margin maybe around them. So I don't know, five might not be enough. Let's say 25 pixels, so they don't touch each other like they used to. I can separate the labels and so on. So this is really to create your own color swatch. Should be after, by the way. So this is for swatches. You can do something pretty similar here with the preset swatch. So preset color again. Let's say primary. Target color. Hexadecimal color. Here we go. And all of that. So this is pretty similar. The swatch and the color swatch and preset swatch work pretty much the same way. Of course, you can use presets instead. You can use that with, I don't know, with headings and so on. You can use that as well. Theme editor. If I use the default color palette, as you can see now, it adds everything. So that one might be a little bit easier to use since it's pre-done for you. Let's say, again, we can have some spacing. Let's say column gap. I'm going to put 2 rem. Here we go. So this is just useful. Of course, this is not the main topic of Advanced Themer, but anyway, the color palette here. So let's use the default one again. And now you have also all the different shades that you can control, show shades or not. So you can show the shades. Okay, so they were visible by default if it was not toggled on. Maybe that's a little bug, but anyway. So you can have all of them as well. So won't go through all the details of all the settings. You can read for yourself. Pretty self-explanatory anyway. Let me save that. And I wanted to show you the shades. It already shows that to you. If I go to my settings here, you see that we can add prefix to that, first of all. So by the way, you can use something like that, for example, for Advanced Themer. This is especially useful if you are using other frameworks like ACSS or BricksProps or Winden or things like that. You can use your own prefix if you want to. Take a note, though, that you should start by doing that, because if you use the variables, whether colors or other variables that we're going to see later on, and at some point you change a prefix, your variable will stop working. You will have to go through all of your pages and add the prefix to the variable that are already applied. So if you want to use some, decide that really from the start. Do I want to enable shades? If I say yes, I'm going to update. And now if I go back to my colors, suddenly you see that all my colors have shades as well. So it starts from my main color, and then it adds 6 lighter version and 5 darker version. When it's available, of course, black cannot be more black, and white cannot be more white. But you have different shades of that same color, which is pretty cool. You can also toggle on dark mode, and you can also import custom shapes of color via JSON. So if I had dark mode, again, you will be able to use the dark colors. That doesn't have anything here, but you'll be able to add the dark colors when you use the dark switch here, that dark and light toggles. So this is not something that I have really used so far, to be quite honest, because I'm using other library. But I did a couple of sites where I used this palette. I didn't use the tools, to be honest, the palettes that we have here at the bottom. But I did use the color palette, color variables that we have right here. So let's go with the other options. Permissions here. So let's go back to global settings. Builder elements we just saw. I'm going to toggle that off. Let's go to permissions. So user permission, by default, the administrator have access to the theme settings and color palettes. You can add other users type as well. And I think that if you have custom post types, custom post or custom user role, sorry, I'm going to say it, then they will appear there as well. Also, you can select whether you are you enable users to upload CSS and JSON file. You can do that just for administrator if you want to, or you can set that for more users. I won't save that and just continue because, of course, nothing special here. Gutenberg settings. If you are using the color palette, of course, you can replace the default Gutenberg palette. So that means that the palette that you will see in Gutenberg will be the exact same one as the one that you have defined here. So pretty cool because, of course, most people will use Bricks to create pages, and they will still use the Gutenberg or the default WordPress editor to edit the posts. So that way you're sure to have the same colors in both builders, if we can call it a builder. And you can also, at the same time, remove the Gutenberg presets. This is what I usually do. But of course, if you are using something like ACSS, this is something that now ACSS support. It was not the case when Advanced Themer was released, by the way, but since 2.5, I think, it does support that as well in ACSS. Maybe other libraries as well do support it. So if you are using a framework that do have that, you can leave that off. If not, it could be a good idea to toggle that on. I'm going to leave them off because at later point, I'm going to show you with ACSS possibly. So I'm going to leave them off. Miscellaneous, disable the ACF menu item in your dashboard. As you can see, ACF is not showing here, but Advanced Themer is built on ACF or Advanced Custom Field Pro. So because of that, they do provide Advanced Custom Field Pro with Advanced Themer. And this is really already an argument to have Advanced Themer, to be quite honest, because let's take a look just for fun. Advanced Custom Field, Advanced, if I can type, Custom Field. How's it priced? Pro purchase here. You have a free version, of course, but the Pro version is $49 per year for one website. For 10 websites, $149, and for unlimited, $249. You have that included with Advanced Themer. And to be honest, Maxim doesn't rely on that in the sense that he doesn't promote it. He doesn't show it that way. I'm not sure that he doesn't. He does have the right to do so. But it does have the right to provide it with his tool, and it does so. So if you intend to use ACF, or if you need to have or already have an ACF Pro license, you can simply forget about it if you have Advanced Themer because it's already included. So if I toggle that off, save that, you will see that Advanced Custom Field appears here. And it's really the full, complete Pro version of Advanced Custom Field. And he has just made an update a couple of days ago, a day or two ago. So it's really the latest version. He keeps it up to date. So that's really great if you want to use ACF Pro. If you want to use your own license, by the way, you can install it and it will override that one. So you will use your own license with support and so on, because of course support is not provided with this license as it is, in fact, Advanced Themer's or Maxim's license. Okay. But that's another great feature that we have there. Again, it doesn't want necessarily to promote it, and I understand him. So that's probably the reason why he toggled that off by default. If you're using JetEngine, MetaBox, any other of the CPT engine, you might want to toggle this on because you might want to use another one than this one. Remove all data when deinstalling the plugin. This is something that you see often, so it will remove all the preferences and all the data in the database if you remove the plugin, if you set that to yes. Of course, if you intend to delete it permanently, that's probably what you want. If you just, for any reason, want to remove it and reinstall it later on, you might want to keep your preferences. That's what's toggled off by default. You can also export and import your settings. Of course, if you have multiple sites, you don't want necessarily to have to redo all those settings, all those configurations every time. So you can export the settings once and import it on all your sites so they have the same settings. And you can also reset the entire settings here as well. So let's go back to the General tab and go with one element at a time, the CSS variables to start with. If I go there, this one has many options. And again, if you take a look at all the options here, these are pretty much the same ones here. So if I could toggle them off, you see that we don't have any options. So again, this is to add or delete all the options at once, but each of them has their own configuration. So a lot of control over that. Same here for prefix as the colors. You can add your own variable prefix. So for example, if I put AT underscore, that means that I will have to add AT underscore, or I should say maybe just AT dash gap dash 1, for example, in this example here. Again, this is mostly if you use other frameworks, because of course, if you just use Advanced Themer, don't necessarily need to have that. And if you have other frameworks, you probably won't use advanced themers, variables, and so on anyway. So really up to you. The base font size is 10, okay? Because the default font size in Bricks is 10 pixel. Why is that? Well, simply because in Bricks, as you might remember, if I go to the typography here, HTML, sorry, HTML font size, Bricks put that to 62.5% by default. And this is to make it easy to calculate pixel. Because as you might know, or might not, I'm going to try to explain it really quickly. 1 rem or 1 m is the character size of the default size of the browser, which is usually 16 pixel. So if you want to have 16 pixels of space, for example, you could specify 1 rem. If you want to have 32 pixel, you can specify 2 rem, 48 3 rem, and so on. But what if you want to specify 25 pixel or 30 pixel? You will have to scratch your head and start to calculate how does it account to. For example, if you want to have 30 pixel, it's going to be probably something like 1.765 or something like that rem. So pretty hard to calculate when you start with 80 pixel, 120 pixels, and so on. So in order to make it easier to calculate, Bricks make it 62.5 instead of 100%, as you can see. If you put that to 100%, you see that everything is bigger. So if we put that to 100%, then it means that it's 16. If we set that to 62.5, then that means simply that 1 rem will be 10 pixel instead of 16. So that will make it easier if you want to calculate. For example, 30 pixel will be simply 3 rem. 48, 4.8 rem, and so on. So that's the reason why it does that by default. Bricks allows you to change that if you want to. Put that back to 100% here in your settings. Advanced CSS also allows you to change that. You won't need to change it both places, by the way. And same thing for Advanced Themer. So if you set it to the default, which is 62.5%, you leave that at 10 pixel. But if you want to switch that to 100%, you see why it's so big here, then you will probably want, well, you will want to change that here to be 16 pixels so that it knows what is the base value. So it will be using the correct value to calculate the rem values and all the other values that it uses everywhere. So if I save that at 16 pixels and refresh here, I deactivated all my switches. Sorry. I'm going to reactivate them. There we go. Just to please it, so that we can have those elements here. Let's see. Here we go. So now it uses the right base font size for these settings here and for everything, everywhere. All right. I'm going to keep that open just because of that. So this is the base font size. Now, what is the minimum viewport width? Which is when we go to the different settings here. Okay. Which is by default 360. The maximum is 1600. That's a lot. So that's the viewport width based on this about the screen size with the palette open and so on. Of course, you can change that to a different size. For example, if you want to go with 1280% pixels, sorry, That could be the maximum one. So Advanced Themer will do the calculation automatically. Okay, this is to use for calculate. Advanced CSS does that. BricksProps does that as well. Means that it will take, let's say, for example, that your base font size is 16 pixel on mobile, and let's say 18, I don't know, on desktop. That means that at 1280, it will be 18 pixel. And at 360, it's going to be 16 pixel on mobile. And between the two, it will have a function that will do the calculation to resize the font size accordingly. Okay, so between 16 and 18, the difference is not that much, but let's make a bigger number, 16 on mobile and maybe 24 on desktop, which is crazy, but just as an example. So it will be 16 on 360, and it will be at 1280, it will be 24. So let's say at 1024, it will be around something like, I don't know, maybe 20 or 18 pixels. No, the minimum was 16. So let's say 22, 21 pixel. So it will resize according to the size. So that's why it's a good idea to put the biggest number here, which will most likely be the same number that you have here in your container. Where's my container? Here's my container, which is 1100 by default. Sorry, I thought it was 1280. So you will probably want to put the same number here. So maybe 1100. Here we go. It will use a VW clamp unit. You can use also the CQY. This is more advanced. Not even sure what it is, but this is the unit of measure used for calculation. So let's keep the one by default. All right, let's take a look at all the options that we have for CSS variables. So the first one, if everything, of course, is toggled on here, the first one will be typography. So Advanced Themer has already created for us all the font size for H1, H2, H3, H5, and so on, up to H6, and the body font size, which, as you can see, is a little bit bigger, 18 and 20 pixels. Okay, we have a little preview here of all the different font size. Okay, why is that? And I think this is the size of the minimum value, by the way. This doesn't mean that all your H1 are automatically this size. This is just a variable that it has created for you to, that's a variable. So it has created a variable font dash H1 so that if you want to have an H2, for example, that is the same size as an H1. Some people will change the tag to be an H1. For example, let me delete those. Start from scratch. All right. So if I add a new title, a new heading, okay, by default, it's going to be an H3. So it should be an H1 or an H2, depending on if it's the first title. But let's say it's an H2, but you want it to be as big as an H1. Some people will simply turn it into an H1, which is not what you should do. It's important for SEO and for accessibility that you keep the right structure. An H2 always comes after an H1, an H3 after an H2, and so on. So if you want to have an H2 but be it the same size as an H1, then you can use the variable. Let me do that very quickly. I know I shouldn't do that in ID, but let's do that just for the purpose of that here. So let's use the var font H1, I think was the name. So you see now I had the same size as an H1, though I have an H2. I can do the same thing for, let's say, an H4. If I wanted to have it smaller, though it's an H2, it has the size of an H4, and so on. Okay? And you see, by the way, that my H2 is a lot bigger if I remove that font size. This is the real font size that I have for my H2 as it is set in my settings here. So what you might want to do is to make sure that, for example, your H1, the default size might be the variable size, which is, for example, font H1. So this way, you are sure that they have the same size of the variable that you use in other places so that you don't have surprises. So H2, so this is my default H2 size. And if you don't like that size, you can simply come here and reduce it. The maximum and minimum, remember, this is on desktop, this is on mobile device. Okay, so you can change those numbers without any problem. And body font size as well here. So in the regular body here, you can use the variable for the font body like that. So this is something that I would encourage you to use. So to make sure that your H2, which has the size of an H4, really has the size of an H4 using those variables. Okay, now, next one, we have spacing. So again, like everything, by the way, you can always use new sizes. So I can delete this one. I can add a new one if I wanted to. So if I want to have a font small, for example, I'm going to put it after. We can, as you can see, drag and drop down. So a smaller font size will be, I don't know, maybe 16 and 24. That will be a really small font size for copyright, for example. Sorry, didn't want to do that. So you can just save that. And now you have added your own new variable for the font size. Really easy and pretty easy to use as well. So if I want this one to be really small, I thought I had used it. So anyway, font small. Here we go. That's how easy it is to use. Now, same thing for the others. You can always add your own. You can delete some of them if you don't use any of them and so on. So we have pre-made sizes. So it goes from gap 3XS for extra small up to 3XL for extra large. And you see a preview of the spacing here based, of course, on the pixel that you have here and the base font size. You can add your own again if you wanted to. You use them the same way using the var keyword in Bricks. Same thing for border, but border, they are not provided, so you can use your own border. You can add one if you want to. Notice that it will add the value like that. So border is not that easy or useful. What I mean by that is if I come here, for example, I'm going to put the default size back. When we use border, we need to specify the different places, the style, and the color. Style, whether it's solid or not, for example, and the color. You need to do that for the entire 4 sides. So here you have all of that in one line. So if I create, let's say, border default, I don't know. Okay. And I save that. Where will I use my border default? Is that here? Is it here? Is it in the color? Not really. So if I use it here, let's say that I put that on all the sides. Okay. I use my variable here. Not sure it will work here because I forgot to refresh, but anyway, border dash, and it was default. Okay. Now, even if I save and refresh, it will probably not work. Why? Because it will put all those values here inside the width, which is not okay. So in other words, the border variables that you have here will be mostly useful for if you write your own CSS. Then you can use that border in your CSS declaration, but not really in the border panel of Bricks. Sorry. That may be one of the reasons why there's no border by default. Border radius, we have a couple of them pre-made for image, card, and button. Of course, these are general sizes. You can change them to make your own sizes. You can have full circle if you want to as well. So around radius, sorry. Round let's say we need to specify that in pixel. Usually I do that in percentage or things like that. So I will have to put a pretty high number to just make sure that it's always rounded. Maybe something like that, as you can see. Um, make sure that it's rounded. And I can use that new variable here to make a circle for an image, for example. Or I can use the one that is already there if all my images will have the same rounded uh, variable. Bug shadow, same thing, no by default, but you can create your own bug shadow. But then again, it will be the same thing. It's more for the CSS that you write manually because you have many elements in the same one. Width, you can specify width that you can use, for example, for different boxes, for a container or things like that, a box, a div. So you can create your own size. And again, let's say, don't know, it's S or width. It's S. Then you will specify this size. Then you can create another one for small. And then you will say, I don't know, 150 and 300. I don't know, something like that, and so on. You can create your own variables here if you want to. Okay. And again, you use them as you wish. Remember, though, that we are in pixel, not in percentage, not on rem, so that's not as useful as other frameworks. And this one is more useful. You can create your own custom variables. Of course, you can do that again manually in the Bricks settings or using another tool like Codebox or things like that to create your own variable. But this could be a pretty easy way to create them here as well. So I don't know. I don't know if I have any IDs here. So let's see. I don't know. I want to create a divider category for all my dividers. Unfortunately, remember that it's going to be in pixel, so no percentage or things like that. But anyway, I can have a variable, fluid or static. Let's go with fluid to start with. So it does the same thing as your typography that we saw previously. So the maximum will be on desktop, minimum on mobile, smallest size of mobile, 360. So let's say divide or div XS for an extra small. I can add another one, div S for, I don't know, for small, and so on. I can also add a static one if I wanted to. So div extra large will be, I don't know. As you can see here, we don't have percentage values, so maybe I could say 100%. We can say instead maybe full, and so on. So we can create your own variable, and you can set them by category, so you can add a new category if you wanted to. So this is a quick way, an easy way to create those. You can also import a framework. So if you want to use a framework, not necessarily a framework that you can have as a plugin like ACSS, for example, but if you want to import, I don't know, then try that. But I know that Maxim has integrated the general framework, something like that, that has been released a few weeks ago. And it probably did that this way. So you can import your own framework if you wanted to. All right, let's go with the second option, classes and styles. Don't need to show them in bricks because that's really, you need to type those. Classes and style, same thing, grid, class importer, and events CSS. We'll add tabs for that. So grid, you have one grid by default, which is a grid 3, which has, of course, 3 columns. You specify the gap between them, which is 2 rem by default, and the minimum column width. That means that if you don't have enough space to have 3 columns of 280 plus the gap, it will reduce that to, I think it's going to be automatically 1 column, not 2 column, but I'm not sure if it's going to be 2 and 1 for the rows. Don't remember, but I think it's going to be simply in 1 column if you don't have the space for the 3. And of course, again, you can add your own if you want to have a grid 2, number of columns. And again, of course, you can have a minimum, I don't know, 760, something like that. and so on. You create as many classes as you want. These are classes. Remember, the others are variables. So var dash dash something. This is classes, so they're going to be used inside the classes panel here if you create any. You have the class importer, so you can add a CSS file that will add classes as well. And you can use advanced CSS, and I don't think it's the advanced CSS as we know it, the plugin created by Kevin Gary. I think it's more advanced CSS that you can type advanced CSS, okay? And in which panel it's going to appear, the CSS page, the global CSS, and so on. I never use those, by the way, so personally, I simply deactivate those two. And if I use only advanced themer, I'm going to use the grid, but not the other two options. All right, so now I'm going to skip the boulder tweaks because that's the longest one. That's the one that I want to put more focus on. So let's go directly with strict editor view. If I enable that, so strict editor, little typo here, view consent you to limit the style access inside the builder for your clients. It also had numerous improvements to the overall brick experience for non-techie users. So what you need to know is that it works hand in hand, first of all, with the brick settings. So with my builder access that I have here, so if I set, for example, any type, role type, to have no access at all to the bricks builder, those settings will not apply. Of course, when I'm talking about those settings, I'm talking about the strict editor settings will not apply. Also, if you set that to full access, it will not apply either. They will have full access to the builder. So in other words, Bricks in this case has the last word. But if you say that you can only edit content, then you have more control. It kind of toggles that into a client mode, if I can say it like that. And now the settings that you have there in the advanced themer will be applied for those user types. So for example, here in my case, it's editor and author. I already went ahead a little bit and added my logo, five icon, yeah. Changed the color of the logo that will be in the corner, the top corner here. Notice that it's only for clients, so it will not appear here for me as admin. So this is really white label. Toolbar, we can decide what we want to show or not show. So everything that is toggled on will be visible. If we toggle them off, they will not be visible. So the logo, of course, will be my logo if I white label it. You will have access to help, the pages, revision, and so on if you want to. But if you don't want them to have access to something, then of course, for example, the breakpoints, I can toggle that off if I want to. So this is for the top toolbar that we have here at the top, of course. Then we have the same thing for the elements. So again, you can toggle everything so they have access to everything. Remember that it's in editor only mode. They can only edit what's already there. They cannot add new stuff, but they can click on stuff and change those. You can also specify just few things. For example, I can allow them to edit the heading, the text basic and text, regular text, and let's say the images, and that's all. Miscellaneous, so any of the following account to hide them from the strict editor views toolbar. So again, that's the toolbar. So reduce left panel visibility. So when you mouse over here, you have the little toggle here to reduce the panel. Disable header and footer edit button on over. So when you mouse over something, if you have a header or footer, you have a little link to say edit those. So you can disable that. So let's do that. Remove template and setting links. So the templates here, I can remove them. So let's save that. And I have added a little plugin here to be able to switch to that, but instead, I'm going to go into another window that I have open here. That will be in an incognito window. And now, right now, I'm an editor. So let me just refresh the page like that. And now, as you can see, I don't have my icons anymore on the top toolbar. I can change the breakpoints here, but I cannot edit them. And most of the buttons are gone. Don't have my add element either. If I click on my heading, because I can edit heading, you see that I can change the text, but that's all. Let's add a couple of things here. I'm going to take over. So let's add, for example, an image. I don't know if I have any images in this website, but yeah, let's go at this one. And remember that we can edit images right here. So I'm going to add also something that they cannot edit. Let's say, for example, I'm going to add, I don't know, an accordion nested. Here we go. And let's save that. Let me go back to my other browser, take over. I'm going to refresh. Now I have the content. If I click on my header, I can edit that. If I click on my image, I can change the image. But if I click on my accordion, I can only click and edit the tab. So this is the text, by the way. So, okay, it gives me a little bit more than I was expecting, to be honest. But that is still text and headings. So I cannot change the settings of the accordion itself. So that's why, yes, I can change the text of the accordion, but not the accordion. Maybe I can use, I don't know, something else just as an example. Let's add a video here.
Yeah, Thomas from Bricks here. In this video, you and me, we are going.
Sorry. So let's save that. Go back to my page here, refresh. Take over. And now, as you can see, I cannot click on the video. I'm going only to the page settings if I click on it. So I cannot change the video itself because it's not toggled on in my settings here in my strict editor view. So this is really cool. If you hand it over to your client, you allow them to have access to Bricks Builder, but you don't want them to have access to everything, to edit everything, let's say it like that. Then this is a pretty cool feature. Okay, let's move on. The AI. With that, I first need to add the OpenAI key, and that I'm not going to do that, but just to tell you that it will add an AI section here, and I will be able to, well, actually, let me do it. Let me pause the video and do it. All right, so I added my API key. You can create an open AI account for free, but of course, you are limited to a certain amount of use per month. If you want to have more than that, you will need to pay for it. So in order to be able to see exactly how to use AI, we'll have to enable something else. Let's go with Builder Tweaks. I won't go into details with Builder Tweaks yet, as I mentioned. But let's at least open the plain class here. Let's say I'll be back with those later on. Let's refresh the page. Okay, so let me get rid of a few things here. A lot of things. Well, let's get rid of everything. It's going to be easier. Okay, so let's start with a new section. And if I want to add, I don't know, rich text to that. Okay. Plain text. Here we go. And we have my OpenAI assistant right there. So let's click on that. Oh, that's true. I didn't really need to have the plain CSS. Anyway, completion chat. We have edit and images. That is something else. So as you can see here, we can generate content. Let's say, I don't know, give me, oh, well, build me a text about the best ice cream, chocolate ice cream. It's hot in the world for 2023, let's say. I don't know. So let's go with that. Oh, I don't have access to it. Let's learn more. Oh, sorry. Little error here in my key. What's going on? All right. If I understand well, this is something new, GPT-4. We need to have paid before July 6th. When I tested it, it was before that date, probably. So open that to other people end of July. We are in August right now. So anyway, I see that I can use in my advanced here something else like G3.5 Turbo. Let's use the 16K. So let's try to see if it works with that. Your current quota. Wow. I didn't even use it for quite a long time. Let me try to take a look at that. All right, so it looks like that my free credits for the trial were expired. So it's just a number of credits for the free account. So I set up a paid account. Let's see if it works with GPT-4 now. And try again. So maybe it's not activated. I would probably have to do something. So let's go back to 3.5. Okay. Let me restart again. Let me refresh. Right, let's try again. So let me make sure to use this one just in case. Let's go with casual. So talk, write a blog post about the best chocolate ice cream in the world in 2023. Let's go with that, generate content. Anyway, sorry, I have an error with that. I will have to check that. I did link it. Maybe I have to save my key again. I don't know. Looks like there's a little bug with my license, even though I just added it. So anyway, this is how you would normally use it, and it would write what you need in this specific case. Sorry that I cannot show it to you, but this is how it would work if you want to use OpenAI. So anyway, let's go with the other settings. Let me toggle that off again. Frontend Playground. So in order to be able to use that, you need to have the admin bar, by the way. So let's toggle on the admin bar at the same time. So that can be useful if I go in my preview mode. You will have the advanced themer bar here, and you will have the, I don't see my element here. Let me refresh again. Why isn't it there? I have the theme settings. I have the manage license. Front end. Custom post type permission. Post attachment. Post page and attachment. Front end. Playground team. Why isn't it working? Didn't I open that? Okay. I don't know why I cannot see my page. Okay, here we go. My mistake. Little note here. URL that contains a query are not supported. Like, for example, question mark run. So if I click on preview, it cannot use that. So I need to go directly to the page. And now, as you can see, enable front end playground will be available. So that's a little bit like the customizer, or I don't know how to call that, the developer toolbar. I think that's the name of Chrome and other builder. So I can click on that now, and I have my settings here that appear to be able to play with the different settings. So I can change my primary color, my shadows, and things like that. See how it impacts my page. Of course, I have just one little text here, so we won't see really a lot of difference here. But maybe, for example, if I increase the font body size, you should see it, as you can see, change in here. And this is just on the foreground. This is just in this page. It's not really applied to the real page right now, but I can copy it later on and apply it if I wanted to. So this is something that I can copy here. I can reset it. I can change the spacing, the gaps. And these are all advanced themer variables and so on. I can change my border if I had any. You see, remember that we had created the rounded one. So we can change the settings here and see in real time how it behaves. And then we can come and, of course, copy and paste those different things here. So this is a way to see in real time how things work. Not something that I use personally, to be quite honest. I'm quite comfortable with doing that in Bricks or using the default browsers, editor, or developer tools. But if it's something that can be useful for you, you can change all of those things here. You have the color tab. You have the color converter and so on. So scale generator, as you might guess, this is not something that I've really used. Just showing it to you so that you know about those. But color palette generator, the most popular palette. So you can use one of those, copy one of those color and add it to your own colors if you wanted to. And you can use the contrast checker, more on that later on. So I can export all the changes that I've made and import it into Bricks after that. So not something that I really big fan of, but you might find it useful. To be quite honest, the real thing that I want to toggle on, that I want to focus on, is the builder tweaks. And of course, if you're not using a framework, variables and CSS classes are pretty awesome as well. If not, and a color palette. If not, then these are all less useful. Let's toggle on the extra last step before going into the browser tweaks. So we have the resources and we have BricksLab. Resources is this is something that you have at the top right now. The last time that I checked, there was no resources in it. Maybe they have added some, so let's toggle that on. And also BricksLab. BricksLab is something that has been developed by Sridhar, somebody on the Bricks page. He has created a kind of tutorial page, let's say it like that. Bricks Labs. .com, I guess. And you can go there, have access to many tutorials. There are some free, most of them are pro. That means that you need to have an account, which I do. And with that, you will have access directly to the Bricks Lab if you, let me try to go back, if you toggle on that little tab here. So just click on the lab icon inside the Boulder Topbar to see the latest article published. And the resources, we can add a gallery. I don't have any galleries, so this is something that you can use to add galleries to your pages. Don't have enough image to do that, so let's still save that and go take a look at my builder now. You see BricksLab here, and I have the resources there. If I needed to create, if I had created galleries, they would be available here. BricksLab. So these are the latest article that we can have access to from here. Can search for specific articles. We can, by the way, change the position of this dialog box, and it's like that for most of the panels, by the way, that we have. So little resource here if you want to know more about bricks. I do have the BricksLab paid account, but this is not something that I usually toggle on here. If I want to go there, I'm going to do it manually. So not necessarily something that I need to have here. So let me deactivate the admin bar, the extra and Playground, and even the AI. These are all things that I don't usually use. Strict Editor View, not so far, but maybe at some point. And let's toggle on the builder tweaks. All right, let's go with the big beast. Builder tweaks. This is the only panel, by the way, that I keep open, that I use. I'm going to deactivate that one. We already saw it. If you are using a framework like Advanced CSS, like BricksProps, like Winden, what else? Core Framework, all the others, you will already have some variables, some classes. So you will probably not necessarily use the others. The tab that you will really want is the builder tweaks. Color, same thing. We will not need those. So if you are using ACSS, for example, as I do in other sites, the builder tweaks is the only thing that I really need with Advanced Themer, but still really worth it. Now let's go into details with that panel. Again, in general, we have all the elements that we can toggle on that will add tabs here. So let's go with the top bar. So the top bar is, of course, at the top of the browser. I'm going to toggle everything on for now. Usually I don't use necessarily the dark mode for now, and most of the time I don't use the X mode, but just to show them to you. We have the grid column that we can toggle on. We will see 12 column grid and 20 pixel of gap. This is something that you can change, of course, if you want to. Let's save that. Gonna close a couple of the other tabs. I have too many tabs open. All right, let's refresh this page. And now, as you see here in my top toolbar, I have some new icons. So the first one, the grid guides, is this one. So it's a little bit like if you used Bootstrap previously with the grids and so on. It's the same principle, 12 columns with a gap between them. So that can help you align things together, especially if you want to use grids, for example. Maybe it will help you align things together on your canvas, on your page, using this grid here. This is not, of course, something that will be visible in the final output, but this is just to help you align things together. Designers usually love that. X mode. Let me add some content to the page. It's pretty empty right now. I'm going to delete what I already have. And let's go with the community templates. Let's download, let's say, home page here. Insert that. I'm going to import the color palette and everything. Oh, forgot one thing. Always forgot that. Since it's just a temporary site anyway, let's bring everything on. So let's do it again, but I'm going to import the images as well. I could replace content, but there's no content really. In order to have something to look at in the page. So some ID that no longer exists, unfortunately, but still we have a little bit of content anyway. So X mode allows me, let's save that, allows me to turn everything, all the colors off and images and so on. Let's do that. So you see everything is black and white, and we have borders surrounding all elements so that you can see the limits of every element on the page. So that can help you to determine what is a block, where it starts, where it ends, things like that. So that's the X mode. Color contrast is for accessibility, one of the elements for accessibility that we have with Advanced Themer. This is to help change the, not change, but verify the color contrast. What is color contrast? It's the contrast between the foreground color and the background color. So for example, foreground color being the text most of the time. If I have a background color and there's not enough contrast between my foreground color, my text color, and the background color, then it's going to be pretty hard to distinguish, to read them, especially for people with visual disabilities, that color blindness, we call that in English. So that will help us to find those and solve it. So let's click on that. And of course, here we have problems with blue on blue, but these are things we know that we just don't have the right images. Here, it says that the text is too light as opposed to the background. So as you can see, it highlights the code or the text, the content that doesn't have enough contrast. So you can always click on it. In this case, it doesn't really change anything if I just change the text. Well, I can go in my panel, my styles, and change the color of the text in order to have a bigger contrast and then test again. So it doesn't change it for you, just highlights where you have color contrast issues. Then you have the dark mode that you can toggle on and off. Of course, I didn't activate different colors. So remember that we can add, and I don't remember if I still have them, but we add buttons that we can add to toggle, toggle the dark mode, or a button that we click and click. It's a switch, in other words. If we have that, we can test it, but if we don't, and we still want to test it, test the dark mode version, if we have enabled dark colors, then we can use that button and in the editor, switch from the light mode to the dark mode using this button. Again, not something I personally use. So these Topbar features, I usually use, sometimes I keep the grid guide, but most of the time I simply keep the contrast checker. And oh, I forgot about the open in new tab because it's on the other side. This little button here. So you know, in Bricks, if we want to preview this page, we need to first of all preview in the builder, and then we can click on view in front end. Pretty annoying, I feel, because 99% of the time, I want to see it in the real browser. In fact, because there are some animations or other things that are not available in Bricks. So this is really what we want most of the time. So with that little button here, we can view on front end directly with one click instead of having to go the 2 steps. So it opens the browser and now you have it right there. And then again, of course, that's really a regular page, let's say it like that, a regular preview. So if I add remove some content or anything like that and save it again, you see that my page will refresh. So it really is real life. Oops, looks like I deleted something I shouldn't because it has changed the layout. But anyway, you see how it works. Let's actually undo that. I don't know why it changes that to remove those images, but it looks like created problems with my layout. Okay, so that's the things that I keep open. Let's go with the structure panel. Structure panel being the panel that we have here on the right side. Let's open that and see everything that is available. All right, so the structure panel, find and replace elements tag. We have the default tag view. So the tag view that we have here. So the tag, we don't see them right now, but we can enable the HTML tag. So none, we have the overview mode, no color and drop down. And we have the developer mode with color and drop downs. I'm going to enable developer mode right away. Don't need to really show you this one. It's the same thing, but black and white, and you cannot click on it to change it. With the developer mode, you can click on it to change the tag. So I'm going to show you how it works in a few minutes. Contextual menu. So right click, hide and show element, move element, delete wrapper, and move children up. Really useful. Extend classes and style, find and replace, class converter, and style overview. I'm going to toggle on everything and show them to you one at a time, but don't need to really enable one at a time and always refresh the page. General tweaks here, shortcode and all of that. I'm going to toggle on everything and then we'll simply compare the two views. Enable shortcuts as well. Here it's going to be blue and pink for the styles and class indicator. More on that later on. And the default width of the structure panel. Let's save that. Take a look at the new structure panel by refreshing this page. So sometimes it does that, no colors and so on, but when I click on it, it kind of activate it. So as you can see here, now we have div, which is in green. We have a little color here at the right side. We have other green tags here as well. And I can click, for example, on my figure here and change that to picture, change that to a div or to a custom tag. I can do the same thing for a div. I can change that to a section, to a link, to an article. So everything that you have really basically in the HTML tag here, but you can do that right from the structure panel. In other words, it allows you to all on the right side without having to always move from the right to the left, to the right, to the left, to the right, to the left. I've many structural element available right there in the structure panel. So yeah. Along with that, you see that we have a bunch of buttons here. These are the options that we have added here, the element shortcuts. So again, because of that, I can come here and add right away a new section with a container. And inside my container, right away, add, for example, a new block. Inside of it, or beside it, add a heading. Add the second heading, let's say, add one basic text button and so on. And you see right away, we have tags applied to it as well. So I can come here, change my tag to an H2, then the other one for H3, that's okay. Paragraph tag here. This is because of another setting. I'm going to take a look at that later on. And we have here the span for button. We can toggle that into something else. No, doesn't work on that one. Just the green one. Sorry. Button doesn't work. So we can do that really quickly. Not all elements are available, but the most common one are available in that tab. And of course, depending on if you have toggled them on or not. Style and class indicator, this is what you have here in pink or blue. So it shows you whether you have styles applied to the ID level or the class level. When you have it in red like that, that means that you have some class applied to the ID level. For those of you that don't know what is the ID level versus class level, when we create a class here, everything that we put into that class becomes part, of course, of the class level. So for example, if I come here, let's add a couple of other blocks. Whoops, didn't want it to be inside of it. Sorry, my mistake. So let's move that inside. Let's move that one inside as well. This one, let's say inside this one, and maybe this one here. And let's go with my container. I have a grid 2, or let's use grid 3 instead. So this is a class. When we click on it, we can come and change the elements that are really for the class. If we don't want to target the class, we can just don't use a class, or we can clear it. And everything, when there's no class here shown, you see the ID itself. So every styling that you apply here is applied to the element itself. So the ID level, this is what we mean. So here it says that we have in our hero and blob div here, the container, we have some ID styles applied to it. If I go to my style, you see that we have the layout here, which is in the overflow hidden. So this is on the ID level. We also have the align self here for stretch. It's on the ID level. So if I wanted, for example, to switch that to a class, I'm going to show you a quick way with expand a little bit later on. But for now, let's just create a class. Let's say hero And I'm going to use the, I don't remember what was the settings with overflow hidden. That's true. So let's go set overflow hidden. That's what I think we had. Let's toggle that off. Yeah. And I'm going to remove it from the styles here. You see, I still have a style applied to that. Why? Because here the stretch is in fact part of it as well. So I'm going to toggle that off. Gonna reactivate my class and apply it to the class instead. And now you can see that I don't have any div or pink border here. So I don't have any CSS applied to the div or to the ID anymore. But I do have a blue one here on the left side, which tells me that I do have some styles applied on in a class. So in a class type. So this could be a pretty good way of knowing in one look whether you have any styles applied to any element on the ID level. What else? We have skipped the general tweaks here. So enable shortcuts for creating new elements. Styles in class indicator, that's what we just saw. Yeah. Okay, so this is to show the bars or not that we have here. And this settings here is to show whether they are blue and pink, as we just saw, or just gray. So better to have blue and pink, of course, to know whether it's a class or an ID. So shortcut for creating new element, resizable structure panel. So if I toggle that off, you see that this section here goes away. So this is to toggle that section here. Resizable structure panel removes the 350 pixel here. Highlight nestable elements. So the icon of the nestable element would be highlighted with a blue color and parent elements. So don't know if I have any nestable elements. I don't think so right now. Did I add the accordion? No, I removed it. So let's say if I add in the block element, let's say accordion nestable here. So you see the blue icon here shows me that I have nestable elements. That's what it means. I think so. Anyway, hopefully, maybe it was just because I just added it. So anyway, it's supposed to show it to you in a certain manner. I'm not even sure how it highlights it. The icon of the nestable element will be highlighted with a blue color. Yeah, that's it. It has a blue color when we click on element, if it's a nestable element. Okay. And we can highlight the parent element. So when we click inside an element, it highlights it, the blue one. So if I click on the element itself, it's not. But when I click an element inside of it, it highlights the parent of that nestable element. All right. So this goes with the bottom section, the contextual menu. Now we took a look at this section, contextual menu. So when we right click, in other words, hide and show element. So I can right click on any element here and now I can hide the element. Okay. It shows me a little icon here that shows me that it's hidden. So I can know quickly. I can click on it to show it again, or I can also right click again and say show element. It adds a display none. So it's not only in the builder, it's really in the front end as well. The content, if we add any content, will not be visible. So as opposed to some other builders, it's not just in the builder itself, it's really on the front end as well. Move elements. So for example, I could take that and right click and move it. You can use some shortcodes, by the way, using the arrows, but you can indent right, you can move it up. For example, you see I moved it up. I can move it down, of course, and so on. So of course you can always click and move it. but that's another quick way. And especially, like I said, you can use shortcodes to do that. I think it's Control Shift, but I'm not even sure. No. Um, this is the new section that we just added. So I don't remember the shortcuts. I don't know if it's going to tell me if I mouse over it and then right and then left. No, I would need to look into the keyboard shortcut to remember those. But anyway, you can use keyboard shortcut to move elements. So if I indent it, it's going to be inside another element. So in this case here, and so on. Of course, we can indent left to put it back to the first level. So this is a really quick way of moving things around. And again, there's a quicker way if you use keyboard shortcuts. Delete wrappers and move children up. This is something that has been added not too long ago, and this is great. For example, if I want to get rid of that section or any sub-elements here, for example, I want to keep my headings, but I want to get rid of the block. If I right-click on it and delete it, it's going to simply delete the block, but also the headings inside of it. Let me just show it to you. Boom, my headings are gone as well. Okay, this is not what I wanted. So if I undo that, now what we can do with the help of Advanced Steamer, we can right-click on the element and say delete, but move children up. You have a little trash can with an up arrow key. So it's going to delete this block, but all the elements inside of it will move in the parent container, in other words. So if I click on that, it has removed my block, but my two headings are still there. Yes, they are at the bottom, but still they are still available. I can move them if I wanted to. Okay. Extend classes and styles. So you can extend in two different places. We'll see that in the other panel here later on, but you can also do it here. So I'm not going to use that right away. This is not the one that I was looking for. Sorry. Extend classes and style. So maybe I need to select something. Yeah, that's the right click. Sorry, my mistake. So we have extend classes and style. I'm going to come back to that later on in the other panel. So we won't cover that right now. But that's a quick way to copy styles and classes from one element to others. Let's just say it like that for now. Find and replace. So again, we can have the find and replace styles here. We also have it here, find and replace, because we have toggled it on somewhere else. So we have that right there and in the right click menu as well. So find and replace styles. This is just for the contextual menu. The other one is somewhere else. I think it's in another, there it is. Find and replace an element tag are available here. So element tag, by the way, is this one, show elements tag or not. So remember that elements tag is this here. So we have three ways. We have non-overview mode and developer mode. We can toggle it on here and save that. But if we enable the element tag, we can click on the element tag to see those three states. So you see none. If I click once on it, you see the tags, but in gray scale. And if I click again, you see the tab with colors. If I click again and go back to none, grayscale, and colors. So these are the three steps: overview mode, developer mode, and none that we have in this dropdown here. So we have the extend classes and find and replace in the dropdown, in the right click, sorry. We also have the class converter. So you can convert from a class to another one. So convert the ID styles to an element. So class converter here. So it allows you to convert a class on the selected element and the children a few clicks. So let's see. I'm gonna close that. And did I do that in one that has the class? This one. Okay. Type your class prefix. So first of all, this is really to create new classes. So let's say I'm going to create, I don't know, a class prefix. So this would be pretty good when you use, I don't know, featured card, for example. So if you watch Kevin Geary's videos, you know that it talks about them, where we can use featured class and then featured class header, featured class content, featured class image, and so on. So this is a way to do something like that. So maybe it's worth it to try to do something similar. I don't know if I have in my section here. So let's let me. Well, whoops. Sorry. Let me tweak that a little bit. This is not exactly what I wanted, but anyway. Let's say I want to need my container. Let me add a new block inside of it. Inside my block, I'm going to insert, I don't know, an image, a title, and oops, oh, I forgot to, yeah, okay, it's on the same level. Anyway, I'm going to add a basic text and a button. Okay, let's move all of that in my block. Forgot to select my block before adding those. All right. So that will be my featured card. Then we will have the featured card image, headings, and so on. So if I never use that, first time I test it, so we learned that together. If I say class converter, I'm gonna add, let's say, featured card here as the class prefix to the element and its children only or the element only. So in my case, elements and children. Copy the ID style to the class. I could, but I don't have any. Erase the ID style, maybe, yes. I don't have any, but let's say anyway. So create classes, boom. So it has created for me automatically, as you can see, featured card block. I should have added another double dash, but anyway. Featured card image, featured card heading, and so on. So basic text basic, button. Let's undo that and test something. Okay, so if I rename those, let's say it's the name, and then we have description, and we have CTA, and let's say here it's a card. No, that, let's say, whoops. Sorry, I moved it by mistake. Use the keyboard shortcut without knowing it. So it looks like it's just the shift key. I don't know. I'm going to keep it like block for now. Don't have any inspiration right now. So let's do that again, but featured card. And now let's use a double dash and create our classes. So featured card double dash for this one. 5 class created. Okay. Featured card double dash. Maybe I should rename that one, but anyway. So we have image, we have name, we have description, and we have our CTA. So perfect BIM nomenclature here. So this is a quick way of doing that. I love that. I love that. First time that I use it, to be honest, but not the last time for sure. All right, so the class converter. All right, style overview. this is something pretty recent as well. So if I click on, let's click on the first one because we do have styles on it, I think. So if I use the style overview, it shows you everything that has been applied to that particular element. All right. So first of all, you have the bricks tab. You have whether you have pseudo elements. So if you have other hover, sorry, active or focus or any other, they will appear here. So here we see that we have the hero CSS class. We have the ID as well. So, and we also have, as you can see, by the way, all the breakpoints. So in we show that we have the hero class here, but we don't see the styles. We see the style right there. So on the ID level itself, oh, sorry. On the ID level itself, I have nothing. When I click on it, it brings me back to the elements. Sorry, my mistake. But on the hero that we have there, you see that we have two properties, align self and overflow with stretch and hidden. They are both in the desktop. We have nothing on the other ones. We have nothing on the over, and if you click on them, you see that's the case. We can also not only see the things, but we can also change them. If I want to change overflow from hidden to visible, this is absolutely possible here, and we can also delete the element right there. And we have a CSS button here that shows you the CSS that Bricks is writing for you. Again, I think you can change it here. Not sure. No, this one is read only. Okay. Overflow, I don't know. It's really read only, so you can copy it to clipboard to paste it somewhere else, but you cannot change it here. So let's say if I go back to my content, not the right one here. My container here with the grid 3. Style overview. So grid 3 here is something that is already added for me. So if I go in my CSS here, we don't see that because it's a locked. If I unlock it, I guess I would be able, but I'm not sure that I can unlock it, by the way, since it's integrated. If I unlock it like that, let's see if I can. No, it doesn't show it to me because it's a advanced themer one. Let's say, let's get rid of that and do it manually just for the sake of this example here. So I'm going to do that on the ID style. Let's switch that to grid. Let's switch to, I don't know, 2 rem for the gap again. And let's use repeat 3 v 1 fr to have 3 equal columns. Here we go. If I do a style overview, you see that those things are there. And I could change those, or I can simply also come right away on the mobile landscape, for example, and change that to 1fr. So automatically it adds to my breakpoint a new value. So if I go back here, you see that on my desktop, we have 3 columns. On my tablet portrait, we have 3 columns. And on my mobile landscape, we now have 1 column. Okay. And of course, this one as well. So you can right away change the different breakpoint values without having to go here, change all the settings in the container or the panel that we have on the left side. So another pretty useful tool that we have right there at our disposal, sorry. I think that's about it for the structure panel. We covered everything. Class and styles. Let's go with that one. A bunch of features. I'm going to toggle on everything, and we're going to cover them after that one by one. So let's refresh this page. Right. You see, sometimes we need to click on the structure panel in order to view those elements, but they do appear. All right, first thing, extend global classes and styles. So if I have an element, let's say here I have one block, okay? If I wanted to create other blocks, okay? Let's say, oops, container here. If I create two other blocks, okay? And I wanted those two blocks to have the same class as this one, which is featured card. Of course, I could have duplicated the block in this particular case. We agree on that. But let's say they do already exist and we want to copy those elements. This is where the extend can be really useful. So remember, we do have it on the right click. But now we also just added it to the class and styles, which in fact is our panel here on the left side. So right there, we have the extend classes and style that has been added. If I click on that, it allows me to copy classes or styles, if it's directly on the ID level, from this element to other elements. So for example, to the following element category block. So I have selected the block right now, and I want to copy that to other blocks. It is possible to copy that to a different element from a block to an accordion, for example. That would be pretty rare that you want to do that, but still it is possible. But we want to copy that to other blocks on the same DOM level, which means siblings, which mean that they are on the same level. For example, if I have, let's say, another block here, this block will not have the class applied to it because it's not on the same level. It's indented inside of this one. But those two blocks do have the same level. In other words, if I close that, they are on the same level. So that would affect those two. Children on the selected element. So the selected element that I have before I click on that button. So all the children, the element inside of that, in other words. On the same parents div, so if we move up to the first div or the above div, block or container or section. So you have the same parent div, the same parent block, the same parent container, the same parent section. So if I select here div, of course I don't have any, but if I select the same parent container, it will be like that if I have, for example, more than one container. It will apply to all the containers in the same parent. If I say to section, it will apply that to all the blocks in the section. So this one will be targeted as well, for example. Okay. And on the whole page, so no matter where it is on the page, it will be affected. Of course, when you say block or div, be really cautious because, of course, it will apply that to every element on the page. Erase existing classes, yes or no. If you say no, then it will add classes to them. If you say yes, it will remove the existing classes and add the new one. One or many. Okay. So I'm going to say no, and I'm going to click extend. And I don't know if it worked because it seemed to create some problems for me these days. Let's see. No, block doesn't have that applied to it. Why is that? Maybe there's a little bug that has been introduced with the latest version, or it's not a global class. Maybe I don't have the right definition of global class, but in my mind, it's a class that I have applied there. It should be a global class. And I put that on the same level. So the siblings. I could say child of the same container as well, by the way, parent container. Should do the same thing. But as you can see, when I click extend, nothing seems to happen. So I think that there's really a bug that has been introduced in the latest updates. So Not sure, but as you can see, it doesn't copy it. And it used to do so. So I'm going to report that to Max. I guess there's a bug that has been added. But anyway, usually it should copy the classes to all those elements, which is really a time saver. So that's really unfortunate that I cannot show it to you. But anyway, you see how it works. You just decide where you want to copy that. And it does it usually. I think it does work with styles, but of course, styles, I would have to copy the styles and it would add it probably to the ID level, which is not really what I want in this case. So I won't use styles. But anyway, the class is not working apparently. Sorry about that. It used to be work perfectly fine. So probably a bug that has been introduced in the latest version that it has been released, I think yesterday. Find and replace styles. That adds that little button here, so you can find and replace any styles. So if you want to change one element to another one, so I don't know if you want to change all the overflow value from hidden to hidden, from hidden to visible. And all the properties, no, I'm going to say with overflow, let's say. And let's say on the old page. Okay. So don't remember exactly. I think it was my element here that add the overflow value. So it has been changed from hidden to visible. So that's the find and replace styles. It's not a class, it's the style itself. You also have that here, find and replace. Okay. What else? Reorder the global classes alphabetically. So all the classes now are by alphabetical order. If we, let's say, if I come here, so you see they are in alphabetical order here. So for the global classes, this is other classes. So not even sure it's the same thing. Maybe my notion of global classes is not the right one in Bricks. Anyway. Group classes by lock status. So if you have many classes applied to an element, you see that some are locked. The ID is locked here. Let's say if I go back to using I thought I'd used, is it just me or something's missing here? Let's refresh my page. Sometimes Bricks has some little trouble, as you probably have faced before, and we need to refresh the page. Okay, so I was pretty sure that I had added the grid styles directly to that, but it looks like I did, but it doesn't show here. I don't know if I changed something else, but anyway, let's use the grid 3 class here. Okay. So this is a lock class, so you can unlock it here, clicking down the lock icon, and then you can change the parameters if you want to. Okay, you can lock it back if you wanted to. So you can group them by lock status if you have many of them that are locked, some others that are not locked. Lock styles on elements ID. So you probably already know that you shouldn't style on the ID most of the time. Some people will say never. I say most of the time because sometimes there are some situations where you might want to style directly on the ID level. So it's really up to you. But by default, I'm going to close that. You see that the style panel is locked. I say by default because if I toggle on everything, it will lock the ID. So that way you're sure not to make a mistake and put that on the ID level instead of a class. How many times did that happen to you? You click on something, you don't see that the class is not selected, and you put some code on the ID level. For example, here, now my class is selected, but if my class is not selected, and I come here and then start to add things in the styles panel, well, it will not be on the class level, but on the ID itself. Now, that helps me to make sure that that doesn't happen if that's what I want, if I don't want to put anything on the ID level. That being said, just like a class, you can always unlock it and do your things here if you wanted to. The difference is even if you add something, let's say in this particular case, I don't know, I'm going to change a direction just for fun. If I go to something else and I go back to that one, okay, it will still be locked. Now, because of another feature, it has selected my class again by default. That's another great thing that prevents me from trying to change something that is locked, like my ID in this case. So it goes directly to the class. So it prevents me that kind of error in a certain way. But just to show you that we can always click on it. But when we click to something else and come back to it, it's going to be locked again. So you need to unlock it each and every time. You might find it really useful to avoid mistake, or you might find it annoying if you want to use ID level styling. So that's really up to you. At the beginning, I was always removing that check or that toggle here. Then I started to use it to style everything, and well, now I'm wondering if it's a good ID or not. So I know how to use IDs. Not everybody knows how to use them, but I do. So sometimes I like to style on the ID itself for different reasons. So really up to you. Anyway, CSS variable picker. So when you click on something, you see those little, no, this is not a good example here. So let me find, if I go in my styles, let's say, I'm going to use this one. You see those little arrows here? So these are the variable picker. So if I click on that, it opens the different variables and classes that we have created. So we can use just the variable, sorry. We can use those, for example, I don't know, the gap. Didn't even check where I am. So sorry. So let's say column gap. Yeah, okay. So we can choose a different gap. We don't have any column gap here. This is really for text, by the way. So I don't have the preview, but usually we would have the preview when we mouse over one of those. We will see it really react on the page itself, if, of course, it applies to that element. So for example here, maybe that's a better example. Let's start that on the ID level. Okay, it was on the ID. That's why that didn't change anything when I added it. Okay. So if I want to change the spacing of the grid here. Of course, I'm using the grid 3, so I would have to go into the advanced themer settings and my variables or my classes in this case and change it here. Okay. Don't want to do that. So let me just get rid of that class for now and go back to using on the ID, I know, but just for this example here. So repeat 3, 1 FR, let's say. You see, we don't have any gaps. If I want to have a gap here, so when I click on the variables here, I see different gaps. So when I mouse over them, I see a preview right away there. So you see when I mouse over the different sizes, I can see that reflect directly on the page. And of course, I can click on it to select one of those and apply it. So this is the variable picker. Suggestion drop down for CSS variables. So when you start typing, let's say I want to do the same thing here. So, oops, sorry. So when I start typing, let's say var, or let's say even grid. Grid is a class, that's true. Is that space? I don't even remember. Gap, sorry. My mind is somewhere else, starting to be really late here. So gap, you see when I start to type, we have the autocomplete here where we can go and select one of those. We can also mouse over them to show them, again, the result. So that's the autocomplete. I can type gap here and 2XL, for example, hit enter. Does it work? No, I'm going to hit tab. Whoops, sorry. I needed going too fast. Gap 2, let's say, or 3XL. Let me go there and then enter to have the autocomplete. That's it. Plain classes. This is something that we have also, that little P that we have here. So that allows you to open that dialog box and type your class's name right there. So what can be useful if you are using, I don't know, library like ACSS or any other framework, or even the libraries here in Advanced Themer. Let's say that I want to have multiple classes to that block. Now, I know it will not work because I'm putting anything, but let's say, for example, I want to add the grid 2, 3 to my element. And also I want to add, I don't know, the text white, if I have a class like that. If I want to add also, I don't know, the align left, and so on. All those classes, whether they exist or not, will be added, of course. If they don't exist, they will be created. So all those 3 classes are added to it. Oh, sorry, looks like I don't need to put some comma here. Just a space, my mistake. I should have read. By space without a dot. Any deleted class from the list will be removed too. So for example, if I remove, whoops, sorry. If I remove grid 2 and my comma here, so I will have only those 2 now on my element. So it has created those 2 strange ones. Let me get rid of those. Here we go. All right, and then of course I need to do something with that, align left and so on. Won't take the time to do it right now. Export ID styles to class. This is really great. If you have not locked, especially the ID, let me unlock that so that it's going to be easier for me to show it to you. So we see that many of those things have classes applied to them. Have styles applied to them. Let's go with that one, for example. Oops, looks like I forgot to refresh my page. Do I have to save it first? Really? Let's refresh. And let's go with the blob bright. Okay, we do have some styles applied to it directly on the ID level. So if I want to export those styles, because I know I shouldn't do that on the ID level, so I did it just for quick testing, for example, or I'm taking the code from, or the page from someone else, like in this case, this has been imported. So I can export those styles most of the time from the side panel, but even sometimes from the content panel. Sometimes we have some options here that in fact will write some CSS. We can export all of that into the into a CSS class by using this little button here, export the style to a class. So let's click on that. We put the name of the class. So let's say blob right, or I could say double dash right. Save that. And now it's on the ID level. You see that everything is empty. Okay. We still have a couple of things here, but these are options, not CSS. If I click on block right, now you see that I do have my layout options that were already there, still selected. My little yellow dot tells me so. So really, really quick way, and you can see here, by the way, at the same time that I don't have anything put on the ID, but I have everything in the class. So that's really great. That's one of the most important and interesting feature of Advanced Themer, for me anyway. I like classes, so when you select a class, it will highlight all the elements that have that class applied. So for example, didn't work to copy, by the way, the class name here. So let's use the featured card. Double dash, even if I shouldn't. Well, I could always rename it, by the way, which I should do. Remove the double dash, and it's going to rename it everywhere that we have applied it. So featured card as well here. So now you see that if I edit any of those, they are all highlighted here with a blue border. And same thing here, we have a blue border that tells me that if I make some modifications here, it will affect all of those. For example, if I go into my border and add, I don't know, 5 pixel, okay, solid, and let's go with the default with the shades. So let's say pretty dark blue, let's say. Okay. I forgot to put that on the 4 sides. Here we go. So now you see that it affects all of those 3 at the same time, but I already had a blue border. If I get rid of that, that would tell me all the elements that will be affected. I also have these settings, by the way. This one tells me that I only have 1 class on that element, but that this class featured card is used 3 times on the page. And that's another setting, which is count classes and navigation. Tells me how many classes that I have, or how many times does that this specific class is on the page. Because of course, when I select it here, I see it right away that we have 3. But if we have a long page and we have those classes used somewhere else on the page, we might not notice that. So this tells us how many we have on the page. If we make some modifications or delete it, how many items will be affected at the same time. Color preview on over, class preview on over, so without any real anything special. So if I click on that, for example, and if I go to my typography colors, okay, when I mouse over the color, you see that it changes in lifetime on the page, on my canvas if you prefer. So I can test that with different colors because I can see right away the result on the page itself. Okay, click it, of course, to apply it. So that's the color preview and the class preview on over for a class, of course. So same thing for a class, what it will look like if I apply this class or this class. Okay. Style indicator in the media query panel. So we add an example, I think, with this one. So we see always that we have the desktop in this particular case that has some CSS applied to it. I had some somewhere else, but maybe I removed it. Looks like. So let me just try to find one that has some styles applied to them. No, these are simply empty. Um, mm, 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 mm. Featured card. Did I had something? No, but I did previously. So let's go with our inspector. Style overview. Whoops, sorry. Wrong one. Wrong one. Style overview. In my feature card section, I'm going to say, for example, there's no styles. I thought that I had added some. Okay, let's say in my feature card, if I have container here, I'm using a grid. Let me get rid of those. These are used less. Okay, we have 3FR on that one. Okay, that's a good one. Style overview. So 3FR, 1FR. Okay, we have that. We have that here. We have the indicator right there at the top that we have some style with the underline, that we have some style applied to the mobile landscape here. That's a bricks feature. We don't have, unfortunately, for that specific example, the same thing here. So let's try to find H3, let's say. Let's say we have, I'm going to put it on the ID and a measurement, but just so that we can see my example. So now in text transform on the, of course, desktop view, but let's say I change it back to none on the mobile portrait. Now you see that I have desktop and mobile landscape. Both icons here tells me that I do have a typography style applied to those two breakpoints. Okay, so that's a quick way. You have that there as well, but this is more general. So this one is nearer, let's say, to the element itself, so more useful in that regard. Indicator style inherited from a class. So let's say if I go back here with my hero class, we know that we have the overflow hidden. Oops, wasn't that on this case here? Overflow visible. Did I remove it? Overflow visible. Do I have a little bug here or what? Anyway, let's go with another one then. Blout right. What do we have that is styled? Let's say if I style that here, for example, center. I don't know. I know it doesn't change anything, but just to show that we have some styles applied to it, it's on the class level. My class is selected. If I clear that class, still applied, you see that I have a blue dot instead of a yellow one. So that tells me that we do have something set here. In this particular case, it doesn't show which one, but in some cases, it will show it to you, the value. So it shows me that I'm not using or editing one element here, but I still have something applied on the class level. So in other words, if I click on that, you see that now it's yellow. I can remove it. I can change it if I wanted to. But at least I know that, sorry, if I click on that, I do have something applied on the class level. Of course, I can always come here and override it with the ID level. Now it's in yellow. But even if I remove it, there's something applied on the class level, and that little blue dot tells me about that. Breakpoint indicator. So that's on the top. So that's what I showed you previously. Okay, at the top there, whether it's yellow underline. Did I skip any of those? Style indicator, style inherited from a class. Okay, no. Luck class indicator, so that little red luck icon that we have on many places that I showed you previously. Clone class. Now we can clone a class as well. So let's say, for example, we have the hero class here. I would like to use most of it, but not all of it. Let's go with the blog right here. Okay, don't know what was the, of course, I added this one, but that was not the original one. It's in, so blog right. Okay, there's nothing really special here. Let's say that I want that to be aligned, that's the blog right, so let's align it to the right, logically. Now I would like to have the same class, but on the blog left. So what I could do, simply come here and duplicate or clone the class. So if I click on that, of course, the class needs to be selected. It will call it blog right new. I can, of course, rename it. Let's say blog left. And it will still apply to this element, but I can always, of course, remove it and apply it to my other element, my blog left here. Here we go. Okay. So that's the clone class feature. Copy classes to clipboard. No. We should be able to duplicate the class. I guess it's right here. So reset style, paste styles, talking about the class, so copy styles here. So not sure, reference that. Like I said, there are so many features, so many new features always, so I didn't test all of those, to be quite honest, as you can see. So copy class to clipboard. A new clone icon will show up once you activate a class. Once you activate a class. So I activate a class. This class is activated. I'm not talking about this clone class, I guess, because copy class to clipboard. Is that okay? My mistake. This is the one. Can copy this class to the clipboard. So many options, and then wasn't sure yet where I was. All right, so that little copy class to clipboard, I can copy that here, come here, for example, and paste it simply like that. And I am applying that to this element as well, which makes no sense for sure in this particular case. Auto close CSS variable brackets. So before that was available, those two elements were available. You see that unless we expand that little panel a lot, let's say if I put it back to its original size, when we have some elements, let's say if I use my class here, we have many informations. Maybe this one will be a better example. Okay, featured card. So we have the copy class, we have the clone class, we have the export, we have the plane, we have the number of elements, and so on. If we enable all of that, there's not much space to see the actual class name, and of course it can even be smaller than that. So we don't even see the class name. There's too many icons there. Well, with this new feature that has been added here, we can hide them until we need them. Let's say it like that. So when I click again on the same block here with the featured card, if I click on it, okay, you see the elements there, but did I refresh my page? Sorry. It's supposed to open it. Okay, sorry. This is not the right feature. This is the auto close CSS variable bracket. So if I open a bracket, forget to close it, Advanced Themer will close it for me. Sorry, I was looking. I had in mind another feature. Okay. Autofocus the first unlock class. So if you have many classes applied to an element, it will automatically target the one that is not locked. That's this feature right here. All right, phew. A lot of stuff in this particular panel here. That's really the power of Advanced Themer, by the way. That's why I use it. Let's go with the next one, elements. So this is again for my element panel here. So this one, those elements, but in the panel that we have on the left side. So let's toggle everything on as we did previously and check the different options. Some of them will add options here at the bottom, as you can see. Many elements have been added. So let's toggle everything on and after that explain it. So let's toggle everything. Refresh my page. All right, and look at the first option. So enable tab shortcuts, what we have right here, tab shortcuts. All of those elements, what are they? So content, layout, typography, and so on. Let's take a look at that. If I think I had refreshed. Sometimes, oh yeah, I need of course to select an element. Let's go with this element here. And now you can see that those icons are now available. That allows me to switch directly to the content tab or to a specific style element. Instead of having to click on style, then open the right one. Then if I want to have another one, click on it. By the way, there's another feature here, as you can see, that auto close all the others. More on that later. But that allows me to go directly from one element to the other directly by clicking on the appropriate icon here. So that's the tab shortcut. Activate the pseudo element shortcuts, which are these. So before, after, active, over, and focus. These are the buttons here. So we already have the conditions, of course, interactions. We have the search, and we have the expand with the other options that we saw previously, expand and find. And now we have all the other pseudo elements. So the hover. For example, if I want to toggle I have a button here. So this button, if I want to toggle the styles on over, what do I have to do? Usually click on the over or the state button here. Click here, select over, then put my code and click back on this button here. Now with those pseudo element shortcuts, we can just click on the hover here and it goes directly to the hover state. So I can put my styles right there. So let's say, I don't know, where does that come? Those colors are coming from. Let's see. Let's use that one. Okay. Well, let's actually use a lighter one and maybe use a darker one on the non-overstate. So you see, now it's a little bit hard to distinguish. Maybe in the light version it's easier. So that tells me that I have a style on the over, but not that I am on the overstate right now. So you need to click on it, really see that you are on the overstate. And it's a little bit more darker, if I can say it like that. When you are editing it, in fact, brighter. But the difference is not that big. So I would probably argue that it's better to take a look at this tab panel here instead. And then we have the before, we have the after, we have the active state, and we have the focus state. So all of those buttons here can go directly to a specific state. Okay. Toggle on and off by clicking and clicking again. The other one that we add, we see a little button there, so I'm going to explain it right now. Enable go to parent shortcuts, which was the next element. So that's the little arrow that we have here. So I'm inside the CTA here, the button. So if I click on that button here, I go directly to the block, the parent of that element. If I click again, I'm moving to the container. Click again, I'm moving to the section, and so on. Remember, though, we do have shortcuts here to do the same thing. So if I use my shift key, I can use my arrow keys to move from one element to the other, but also, oops, freeze. I can use the right arrow key, up, left key, and so on to move from one element to the other as well. Okay. Lorem ipsum generator. So you have here two types of content, lorem ipsum and human readable text. So real text, in other words. That goes with the lorem ipsum generator option at the top. If you toggle that on, you will have a little lorem ipsum generator. Let's say, for example, let me just add, I don't know, some basic text here. Okay. So in my content, now I have that little button, add dummy content. So I can click on this, and this will, let me just delete that, it's going to be clearer. It will create some lorem ipsum text. I can click the number of times that I want to. And of course, if I choose the other option, that will be real text. So you have that for text, rich text. I think you have that for heading, not sure. No. So just for text. Disable the pin icon on the element list. So, of course, it is activated right now, but you might remember that on the element list here, we usually, when we mouse over, we have a little pin icon here at the top where we can click on it, and then those elements will be here at the top of the list. So this option disable that little pin icon. So most of the time, you might not want to disable that. Maybe some people find it annoying to see it there. I don't know. But if you want, you can disable that pin. But of course, you don't have your favorites panel after that. Close all open styles accordion by default. So this is what we saw previously when I mentioned that if I click on any styles, I just see the typography, I just see the border, I just see the transform, instead of seeing all of them. Like if I click on the style here, I see all of them, and I need to close one sometimes to go to the next one because it's out of the page. I need to scroll and I need to close or open them. So that options means that when we click on something, we only see this one. Of course, you can toggle that off if you don't like that behavior. Hide inactive style accordion panel. Yeah, that's the same thing. So this is to close all open styles accordion. So when you come to the style, they are closed by default instead of one. The first one, usually the layout is open by default, I think, or the last one that we use anyway. So now they are all closed. That's this option. The other option, disable element, inactive style accordion panel, is just what I mentioned. Sorry, I mixed them both. So we hide all the others. We just show the current one that we clicked on. So this is the option that I mentioned previously. This is the one to have them closed when we clicked on the style panel. Disable element outline when styling borders and box shadows. So of course, when we style an element, and I don't know what I changed, my my element here is we scrapped. Oh, description has been added there. That's why. Okay. So 3 columns. forgot what I wanted to show you. Okay, border elements. So when we click on something, remember that by default we have the border that surrounds everything that we're gonna change at the same time. But when you want to style the border, you don't see. By default, if you don't deactivate that, you will not see necessarily the border. So for example, if I have, I don't know, a 2-pixel solid red border. Okay. So now I can see my border the right way. Not on those other elements, but at least on the one that I'm editing right now. If I don't toggle on this feature here, if that is disabled, I will still have the blue highlight even on around this one. So it's going to be pretty hard for me to see the border that I'm actually styling right now. So that's why this box here on this toggle is pretty interesting for that. Change the column of the element list panel. So this is the options that we have. When I go to the elements panel here, we have 3 buttons that are there. This allows me to switch between 2 buttons, 3 rows of columns of buttons, and 4 columns of buttons in this preview panel, on this element panel here. Of course, if you want to have more than 2 buttons, you will probably want to expand that a little bit so that you can see at least a little bit of the icons or a little bit of text. If the icon is enough for you, then that's okay. You can put that smaller if you want to just use the icons. Really up to you. But this allows you to have more than 2 elements on the same row. So this is to change the column, and you also have this element here that shows you how many columns you want to have by default when you open the page, 2, 3, or 4. So if I say 3, for example, because I always have a pretty big screen, then I can have always 3 by default, but still have the button at the top to switch from one to the other. We can, of course, deactivate that, but still choose, no, okay, it does enable the options if we toggle that off. So we don't have the option. If we want to have more than 2 columns, we need to have the buttons at the top. Okay. Superpower the custom CSS control. That is pretty new, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's the fact that we have auto-code completion and things like that in the CSS panel. Let me check that. Yeah. Match bracket, auto Winden, search function, CSS variable, autocomplete, and so on in the CSS panel. That means that if I select any items, I go to my CSS panel here. So let's say if I don't know, say root, opening curly bracket, you see that it automatically closed the other one. If I use, I don't know, variable, it automatically closes the other parentheses, and so on. Okay? So all of that is done because of that more advanced superpower, as it says, CSS control. Okay? Increase the text control size. I didn't really check the different what difference it makes, but it should expand the element. So it's check the text control field where you had your custom values will be increased from 30 to 50% and leave more room to write CSS variables and advanced CSS functions. So like I said, they're not really compared. But what it says is if I type, I don't know if that will work because I'm using, oops, I don't like that. Because I'm using, this field is not really good. Maybe we will see it better if we work in something like that. So var, and here it's not really expanding. Anyway, so it's supposed to expand the field to make them bigger. So I don't know which example that I can give you right away. It's probably already bigger, by the way. Didn't compare them, but it doesn't necessarily, as you can see, expand this field or a particular field. if you have something specific, click on a specific field. So anyway, it should make them a little bit bigger. Reveal class icon over. When this option is checked, the icons that stand inside the class input will be hidden by default and visible when over, unfocused. Okay, that's what I mentioned previously. So for example here, right now I don't have the icons for this class. I only have them when I mouse over. So that allows me to see clearly the different class or the different elements. You see, I see feature card pretty well, and I see all those buttons only when I mouse over it. If that option is toggled off, it will look like that every time, even if you don't mouse over it. So especially if you have a smaller screen. So it's pretty hard to see which class you are currently editing. Of course, if I have just one, I know that I'm editing that one. But if I have 2, 3, 4 classes applied to that, which one am I editing right now? Can be hard to read, especially if it looks like that. Okay. Or if you have many feature card something, which one are you editing right now? Okay. So that's really useful. Before that, honestly, I was disabling many of the class styles here on the account and things like that because it was taking way too much space. Tab shortcuts on top offset. So if you use the shortcuts here, by default, it needs to be offset because, of course, previously, I think it was already at the top. So now we want to have the elements here at the same level. Of course, now if we close all the others, they won't be. But if we don't hide the other styles, let's say, for example, if I go that way, you see that my layout panel will be there, typography. So I need maybe to adjust here. That's because I have too many icons here. So let's expand that a little bit. So it's on one line. So now you see that if I remove this, my layout is at the same level as my button, typography, and so on. Of course, as you saw, if I had some classes, if I had different elements here, then that can move down and it will not be directly aligned with it. And of course, depending on the size screen, so on, it might move a little bit. But this is just to say that you can offset that more if you wanted to. For example, if it's like that always, let's forget about the class name. But if you always have the panel like that, you might want to offset that from for more than 159. Of course, if you hide, like I said, all the panels, it will not be at the same level anyway, so that's not really a problem. It's really just if you want to keep the style panel open, always show all the elements, in other words. Phew! Tired of talking. Last one. I think I covered everything here. No, something new. Custom settings, default custom settings. When we have a new basic text, it will add a paragraph tag by default. For example, I don't know. Let's do that. This is a text. Okay, not on the right block. Anyway, if I had a basic text here, you see that it adds the p tag. By default, it was adding, I don't remember if it's the div. I think it was adding a div. And to be more semantically correct, you needed to come here and change that to, whoops, I'm not on the right one. Change that to a p tag instead of the default div. If I remove that, you see that it's a div by default. So I needed to come here, select a p tag, which is way more relevant, semantically correct. Of course, if you enable that here, you can do it directly from this place here, but still you need to do that manually. So with this new option, it will automatically add a p tag for all the basic text. It will automatically add the figure tag to the images if you toggle that on, of course. If you, it will automatically set the images to no caption. So, of course, I already have a bunch of images here. So caption type here. Attachment is by default. So if you have any caption on your image, it will always appear by default. So you need to manually turn that off to no caption. Well, with that option, it does that automatically for you when you add a new image. And then you can, of course, change that if you want to show the caption for an image. Same thing, button. So as soon as you add a new button, it will add the, and maybe this is not the real one, but let's add a button. You see it has added the button tag instead of the regular A tag, I guess, is the one that it uses by default, usually. Last thing, keyboard shortcuts. So you can toggle everything on. You have the open advanced themers model functions. You have the structure panel, move element inside the structure panel, and you have all those keyboard shortcuts. As of today, and I did mention that to Maxim, but I think I have to open, I don't know if it's a support ticket or feature request, I should say. These shortcuts only work with Mac. So usually it's Control Command, and it should be on Windows Control Alt. Should do the same thing, but it doesn't work on PC. So personally, I always toggle that off because I'm using a PC. But if you want to use that on a Mac, you can toggle on the keyboard shortcut. You can change them if you want to, of course, just the last item. But still, I will talk to Maxim about that, and he will probably check that and find a way to make it available for PC users as well. So if you want to have other keyboard shortcut, other than, of course, the ones that are in Bricks itself, which is most of the time, I think, Control Shift. So this one is using Control Command instead, and probably Control Alt on PC when it becomes available. Phew! We did it. We covered everything. More than 2 hours, almost 3 hours long video. I hope it was helpful to you. I hope you see that in the high speed as well. So thanks to you. You can put any comments, of course, down below. If you liked it, put a thumbs up. Really long video. Sorry for that. Really tired of doing it on my side as well. I know that some people really like to create short video, and I like to watch short videos sometimes. But also sometimes I want to really know everything about a specific feature, specific plugin, specific builder. So this type of video is for you if you're that type of guy. Though it's pretty long, do something else at the same time. But at least every nitty-gritty option, feature available in a specific element, in this case, Advanced Themer, is available in this video. So thank you and have a good day.